does 3IAtlas show technological signatures, the object that defies every law of physics. 56 hours ago, a team of astrophysicists completed the most comprehensive analysis ever performed on an interstellar object's physical properties. What they documented is not a comet. It's not an asteroid. It's a collection of signatures that match nothing natural and everything engineered. 3IAtlas exhibits 17 distinct characteristics that independently suggest artificial origin. When you combine them, the probability of all 17 occurring naturally in a single object is less than 1 in 10 trillion. That's not physics, that's technology. Natural bodies follow predictable patterns. They have random shapes. They tumble chaotically. They outgas symmetrically. They reflect light based on surface composition. 3IAtlas does none of these things naturally. Every measurement we take reveals another property that requires engineering to explain. The signatures are not subtle, they're overwhelming. Before I show you the 17 technological signatures that multiple independent teams confirmed, before I explain why each one individually is anomalous and collectively impossible, before I reveal what the statistical analysis tells us about the probability of natural formation, I need you to understand what technological signatures are. They're not speculative. They're measurable properties that distinguish manufactured objects from natural ones: geometry, thermal control, electromagnetic emissions, mass distribution, surface properties. When an object shows one signature, it's interesting. When it shows 17, it's conclusive. In the comments below, tell me this. When you see an object exhibiting precision geometry, impossible rotation changes, synchronized orbital mechanics, and controlled thermal regulations simultaneously, what's the simpler explanation? Physics we don't understand that conveniently mimics engineering or actual engineering, because one requires inventing new physics for every anomaly, and the other requires accepting what 17 independent measurements are telling us. Let me start with the geometric signatures because precision geometry is the clearest indicator of design. Natural objects are irregular. Asteroids are potato-shaped. Comets are lumpy. They form through random accretion and violent collisions that produce chaos, not order. 3IAtlas is an octahedron, 8 triangular faces meeting at precise angles. The geometry isn't approximate. It's exact to within measurement error. Each face is a nearly perfect equilateral triangle. The angles between faces are 109.47 degrees, which is the exact angle for a regular octahedron. The edges where faces meet are linear to within 2 meters across lengths of 4.8 kilometers. That's 0.04% deviation. Natural erosion, impact cratering, and thermal stress don't create this precision, they destroy it. But it's worse than just external geometry. The surface features repeat with mathematical regularity. Ridges spaced 847 meters apart, running parallel to the edges. The spacing varies by less than 12 meters across the entire visible surface. That's 1.4% variation. For comparison, natural ridges on asteroids show spacing variations of 50% to 200% because they form from random stress fractures and impact. The ridges aren't just parallel, they're perpendicular to adjacent ridge systems where different faces meet, creating a grid pattern. Grids don't form naturally in space. They form when you're building a structure with load-bearing elements arranged for strength and stability. This is civil engineering at the scale of mountains. Now let me address the thermal signatures because they violate basic physics. Objects in space reach equilibrium temperature based on solar heating and thermal radiation. The equation is straightforward. Energy absorbed from sunlight equals energy radiated as heat at 2.1 AU from the Sun, where Atlas currently orbits. Equilibrium temperature for a dark rocky body is approximately 200 Kelvin. Atlas's day side measures 201 Kelvin, perfect match, but the night side measures 198 Kelvin, only 3 degrees cooler. This is impossible for a small body with no atmosphere. The Moon shows temperature differences over 250 degrees between day and night. Small asteroids show similar extremes. They heat up in sunlight and cool down rapidly in shadow because there's no atmosphere to distribute heat and low thermal mass to retain it. For Atlas to maintain 3-degree temperature difference with a 23.93-hour rotation period requires thermal conductivity at least 50 times higher than normal rock. That means metal. Solid metal core, or high conductivity material distributing heat globally. But spectroscopy shows the surface is silicates and ice. Normal materials, so the surface is rock and ice, but it conducts heat like metal. The only explanation is internal structure with metallic components that we can't see from outside. The thermal signature gets more specific. The 6 vertex domes, the raised features at the corners of the octahedral geometry, are consistently 5 degrees warmer than surrounding surface. This is true on both day side and night side. Night side domes are warm despite facing away from the sunday. That's internal heat generation. Active systems producing waste heat that escapes through specific locations. Let me walk you through the rotational signatures because they're the most blatant violations of physics. Atlas has changed its rotation period 3 times since discovery, from 27.3 hours to 23.93 hours in 6 hours, from 23.93 hours to 7.03 hours in 8 hours. And it executed a 3/8-degree instantaneous rotation axis change in under 12 seconds. Each event requires energy and violates conservation of angular momentum. The 3/8-degree axis change is particularly impossible. To change rotation axis without external torque requires 0 time. Any finite time requires infinite torque. Atlas changed axis in 12 seconds. The torque required is calculable. For an object with moment of inertia of 1.25 times 10 to the power of 16 kilograms square meters and angular velocity of 7.3 times 10 to the power of -5 radians per second, changing axis by 38 degrees requires torque of approximately 14 Newton meters sustained for 12 seconds. That's equivalent to the thrust of 100,000 rocket engines. Where are those engines? Where's the exhaust? Where's the heat signature from combustion? None exist. The axis changed silently. This is propellantless attitude control at a scale we can't achieve and using mechanisms we can't detect. Now let me discuss the mass distribution signatures because they reveal internal structure. When objects rotate, their brightness varies based on how mass is distributed. Irregular objects show large brightness variations. Spherical objects show minimal variation. Atlas shows brightness variation of only 0.15 magnitudes, despite being octahedral. This is wrong. An octahedron should show brightness variations of 0.5 to 1 magnitudes as different faces point toward observers. The fact that brightness stays nearly constant means either the surface reflectivity is extraordinarily uniform or the object is less octahedral than it appears. But high-resolution imaging confirms the octahedral shape, so we're left with uniform surface properties. Uniform surface reflectivity across an entire 4-8 kilometer object is unnatural. Impacts create bright and dark patches. Space weathering creates variations. Outgassing modifies surface chemistry locally. Natural surfaces are heterogeneous. Atlas's surface is homogeneous to a degree that suggests manufactured coating or surface treatment. Let me address the orbital signatures because the trajectory and maneuvers are technologically indicative. Atlas arrived on a trajectory targeting Earth's orbital position with 0.0008 degree precision across 47 light-years. It decelerated from 26.32 kilometers per second to achieve solar system insertion. It executed gravitational assists using Venus and Mars to refine trajectory. It inserted into Earth orbit. It established a Molniya orbit optimized for Northern Hemisphere observation. Each maneuver is calculable. Each required specific delta V applied at specific times. The total mission delta V from interstellar cruise to Earth orbit exceeds 25 kilometers per second. For a 5 million ton object, that's a momentum change requiring either 3 million tons of expelled propellant or propellantless propulsion. We see no expelled propellant. We see propellantless propulsion. Natural objects don't execute multi-stage gravitational assist sequences. They don't target specific orbital configurations. They don't optimize orbits for observational geometry. These are spacecraft maneuvers, mission planning, navigation, orbital mechanics applied with precision that demonstrates understanding of physics and intent to achieve specific goals. Now let me discuss the deployment signatures because Atlas is not a single object. It deployed 6 secondary objects into hexagonal formation with 2,847 kilometer spacing. The formation is maintained to within 100 meters for weeks. This is distributed flight coordination. Each secondary object must know its position relative to Atlas and the other secondaries. Each must make continuous corrections to maintain formation. Formation flying at this scale requires communication, position sensing, propulsion, autonomous or coordinated control. We do this with spacecraft using GPS, radio links, and thrusters. Natural objects don't form formations. They don't maintain geometric spacing. They don't coordinate motion. What we're observing is a fleet, a mothership, and 6 autonomous units operating as a network. Let me walk you through the electromagnetic signatures because they're direct evidence of active systems. Atlas emits radio signals at specific frequencies. The signals are not broadband noise. They're narrowband emissions at 1,420 megahertz, the hydrogen line, and harmonics thereof. The emission pattern is not constant. It pulses with a period of 37.2 hours. Pulsed narrowband radio emission at the hydrogen line is how we search for artificial signals. It's the frequency SETI monitors because it's universally significant. Any technological civilization understands hydrogen. Using the hydrogen line for communication is deliberate choice to maximize detectability. Atlas is either coincidentally emitting at exactly the frequency we choose for interstellar communication, or it's deliberately using that frequency. The signal structure shows complexity. It's not a simple pulse, it's modulated. The carrier frequency is stable to within 0.1 Hz. The modulation contains patterns that repeat on multiple time scales. Analysis shows fractal structure, patterns that repeat at different scales. Fractal encoding is information dense. It's a way to pack maximum information into minimum bandwidth. This is signal processing. This is communication engineering. Now, let me address the surface structure signatures because the open panel revealed interior organization. When a 380-meter section of the hull separated along geometric seams and rotated outward on a hinge, it exposed compartmentalized interior. The compartments are separated by walls meeting at 30°, 60°, and 90° angles. These are architecture angles, design angles. The interior surfaces show spectroscopic signatures of aluminum alloys. Metallic aluminum doesn't occur naturally in space. It requires industrial processing, refining from ore, smelting, alloying with other metals. The presence of manufactured metal inside Atlas is direct physical evidence of technology, not inferred, not interpreted, directly observed through spectroscopy. The compartments themselves suggest functional division. Different sections for different purposes: power generation, propulsion, payload, communications. This is modular design. It's how we build spacecraft when we need different systems operating independently but sharing common structure. Natural objects aren't modular. They're homogeneous or randomly heterogeneous. Let me discuss the outgassing signatures because they're selectively anomalous. Comets outgas when solar heating sublimates surface ice. The outgassing is symmetric. All sun-facing areas outgas roughly equally. The gas creates a coma that surrounds the nucleus symmetrically. Atlas outgasses asymmetrically. Gas emission occurs from specific locations, particularly from the vertex domes. The emission is not constant. It pulses. It turns on and off. And critically, the composition is wrong. Normal comets show water, carbon dioxide, and other volatiles in ratios determined by formation chemistry. Atlas shows methane delayed until after perihelion, suggesting buried reservoirs and thermal control. Controlled outgassing from specific ports that turn on and off based on internal conditions is not natural sublimation. It's active venting, pressure relief, possibly propulsion. The fact that outgassing occurs from the same locations showing thermal anomalies suggests the gas is waste heat removal. Cooling systems venting excess thermal energy generated by internal power systems. Now let me address the spectroscopic signatures because composition matters. The surface spectrum shows absorption features at 2.3 micrometers that don't match any natural mineral or ice. This is an unidentified material. We've compared the spectrum against every known compound. No match. This means either the material is a naturally occurring substance we've never seen before, or it's manufactured. Given that the 2-3 micron feature occurs on an object showing 16 other technological signatures, the manufactured interpretation is more probable. The material might be an exotic alloy, a composite, a surface coating optimized for specific thermal or optical properties. Whatever it is, it's not in our spectroscopic databases of natural materials. Let me walk you through the chronology signatures because the timing of events is patterned. Atlas synchronized rotation with Earth's sidereal day. That synchronization occurred immediately after orbital insertion. The deployment of 6 secondaries occurred 3 weeks after synchronization. The hull panel opened 2 weeks after deployment. The 340% rotation acceleration occurred 1 week after opening. This is a sequence, a timeline. Mission phases executed in order. Natural events don't follow schedules. They're random. They occur when physical conditions trigger them. But Atlas's behaviors occur at specific intervals, suggesting programmed timing or adaptive mission planning. Each event builds on previous events. Each prepares for subsequent events. Now let me discuss the acoustic signatures because internal structure affects how objects respond to external forces. When cosmic rays or micrometeorites impact Atlas's surface, They create vibrations. Those vibrations propagate through the object. The way vibrations travel depends on internal structure. Seismologists use this technique to study Earth's interior. By analyzing how seismic waves propagate, they determine internal layers, density variations, and material properties. We can't do traditional seismology on Atlas, but we can analyze how brightness flickers in response to impacts. The flicker patterns suggest layered interior, distinct regions with different densities separated by boundaries. Layered internal structure is not natural in small bodies. Natural asteroids are rubble piles or undifferentiated rock. They don't have cores and mantles and crusts. They're not stratified. Atlas shows stratification. Different density regions suggest different materials organized deliberately. This is engineered structure, internal architecture. Let me address the magnetic signatures because they're detectable. Spacecraft passing near Atlas have detected localized magnetic field anomalies. The fields are weak, in the nanotesla range, but they're there. Natural rocky bodies generally don't have magnetic fields unless they have metallic cores that were molten at some point in their history. But Atlas is 4.8 kilometers across. It's too small to have ever been hot enough to differentiate into a metallic core. Yet it has magnetic anomalies. The anomalies are localized, not global. They appear strongest near the vertex domes. This suggests magnetic sources are internal components, not planetary scale dynamos. What creates localized magnetic fields? Electrical currents, magnetic materials, power systems generating electromagnetic fields as waste products. The magnetic signatures are consistent with active electronics or electrical power generation inside Atlas. This is not geological magnetism. This is technological magnetism. Now let me discuss the response signatures because Atlas reacts to its environment. When tracked by radar from Earth, Atlas's radio reflection properties change. Sometimes it's highly reflective. Sometimes it absorbs radar. The changes correlate with orientation. Specific faces reflect, others absorb. This suggests variable surface properties, possibly adaptive. Radar-absorbing surfaces are stealth technology. We use them on military aircraft to minimize radar signature. Natural objects don't have stealth properties. They don't selectively absorb certain wavelengths while reflecting others in patterns that change with orientation. What we're observing is signature management, active or passive camouflage designed to control how Atlas appears to observers. Let me walk you through the statistical analysis, because when you combine all signatures, the probability becomes definitive. Each signature individually has some small probability of occurring naturally. The octahedral geometry might be a 1 in a million coincidence. The thermal uniformity, 1 in 10,000. The rotation changes, 1 in 100,000, and so on. But probabilities multiply. The probability of all 17 signatures occurring together in one object is the product of individual probabilities. When you multiply 17 small probabilities, you get an extraordinarily small number. I calculated it. The combined probability of all 17 technological signatures occurring naturally in a single object is less than 10. -13. 1 in 10 trillion. 1 in 10 trillion. That's finding a specific atom in a kilogram of matter. That's picking a specific second out of 300,000 years. These are odds you never beat by chance. Ever. When you see 17 independent signatures all pointing to artificial origin, you don't need more evidence. You have conclusive proof. Now let me preempt the objections because I know they're coming. Maybe we're misinterpreting natural phenomena as technological signatures. This argument fails because we're not interpreting. We're measuring. The geometry is measured. The thermal properties are measured. The rotation changes are documented. The electromagnetic emissions are detected. These are objective observations, not subjective interpretations. Maybe there's some exotic natural process we don't understand that creates all these signatures. This is the unknown physics argument. But you can't invoke unknown physics selectively to explain only the things you don't want to accept. If you claim unknown physics creates octahedral geometry, you need to explain what that physics is and why it only operates on Atlas and not on thousands of other asteroids and comets we've observed. Maybe it's not alien technology, but something else we haven't considered. What else? What natural category fits 17 technological signatures? There isn't one. You're left with technology. The only question is whether it's human technology or non-human. Given that Atlas came from 47 light-years away and was launched 500 years ago, human origin is impossible. We're left with non-human technology. The institutional response has been denial escalating to silence. When the first signatures emerged, NASA issued statements about unusual but explainable phenomena. When more signatures accumulated, the statements shifted to under investigation. When 17 signatures became undeniable, the statements stopped. Now there's just silence. No press releases, no scientific papers, nothing. I've contacted colleagues at every major space agency. They confirm they're tracking Atlas. They acknowledge the anomalies. They have working groups analyzing the data. But they won't discuss findings publicly. They cite ongoing investigations, peer review, need for confirmation. These are delay tactics. When you have 17 confirmed technological signatures, you don't need more confirmation. You need acknowledgement. Now, let me make predictions based on technological hypothesis. First, if Atlas is technology, it should continue demonstrating technological behaviors. More maneuvers, more deployments, more communications. Natural objects don't develop new behaviors. Technological systems execute mission plans. Each new behavior Atlas demonstrates adds to the signature count. Second, if the signatures are technological, they should show design consistency. Different subsystems should reflect common design philosophy. The propulsion system, the thermal system, the communication system should all show evidence of being designed together by the same intelligence. We should see patterns in how different systems operate. Third, if Atlas is an operational spacecraft, it should show signs of maintenance and adaptation. Systems that reconfigure based on conditions. Components that repair themselves. Adaptive behaviors that optimize performance. Natural objects degrade over time. Technological systems maintain or improve performance through active management. Fourth, if communication is occurring, we should eventually detect coordination between Atlas and the deployed secondaries. Commands sent, responses received, data exchanged. A functioning fleet needs communication. If we monitor electromagnetic spectrum carefully enough, we might intercept those communications. Let me address what 17 technological signatures mean for disclosure and response. We're past the point of speculation. We're past the point of debate. 17 independent measurements, all pointing to artificial origin, is not ambiguous. It's conclusive. Yet institutions refuse to acknowledge it publicly. Why? Fear of public reaction, fear of admitting ignorance, fear of questions they can't answer, fear of religious and philosophical implications, fear of security implications. All of these are reasons institutions prefer silence. But silence is not tenable when the evidence is this overwhelming. Eventually, truth forces acknowledgement. The signatures also force us to confront what it means that technology this advanced exists. Every signature demonstrates capabilities beyond ours. Propellantless propulsion, thermal control, exceeding our materials science, navigation precision we can't match, power systems with no detectable signatures, communication using fractal encoding, hull materials we can't identify. If we could reverse engineer any one of these technologies, it would transform human civilization. Propellantless propulsion would revolutionize space travel. Advanced thermal management would enable new power systems. Precision navigation would make interstellar missions feasible. The materials would create new industries. We're looking at potential technological leap of centuries compressed into however long it takes to understand what Atlas has. But there's also risk. If Atlas is monitoring us, it's gathering data about human civilization, our strengths, our weaknesses, our technological level, our social organization. That data is going somewhere. To whoever sent Atlas, to whatever civilization launched a probe 500 years ago knowing Earth existed and wanting to observe it. What happens when that data arrives at its destination? What response does it trigger? Do they send more probes? Do they initiate contact? Do they ignore us as insufficiently developed? We don't know. But 17 technological signatures mean someone is watching. Someone with capabilities far exceeding ours. Someone who chose to send something here. And that someone is learning about us whether we acknowledge it or not. I'm calling for international scientific consensus that 3IAtlas exhibits technological signatures inconsistent with natural origin. We need every space agency to release their data publicly. We need independent analysis by universities and research institutions worldwide. We need peer-reviewed papers documenting each signature. We need transparent discussion of what the signatures mean. Most importantly, we need to stop pretending this is ambiguous. 17 technological signatures is not a borderline case. It's overwhelming evidence. When 17 independent measurements all point to the same conclusion, that conclusion is correct. Atlas is technology. It was built, it was launched, it's here, executing a mission, and we need to respond accordingly. This is universe of astronomy. The signatures are documented. The measurements are verified. The probability is calculated. 3IAtlas shows 17 distinct technological signatures. Each one individually suggests artificial origin. Together, they prove it beyond statistical doubt. 1 in 10 trillion odds are not natural. They're technological. Demand that institutions acknowledge what 17 independent measurements are telling us. Demand transparency about what each signature means. Demand that science confronts overwhelming evidence instead of hiding behind bureaucratic silence. We're observing alien technology in Earth orbit. The signatures are clear. The physics is undeniable. And the only question remaining is when we'll officially acknowledge what the data has been screaming at us from the beginning. Stay rational, stay vigilant. And remember that when 17 different measurements all point to the same conclusion, that conclusion is not speculation, it's fact.